Basically, the
Okay, cool.
NBA,
Okay.
because there's an established trade market, right, and it's a closed market. So
Yeah.
because of your salary cap, what you want to do is you want your best players as cheap as possible, and to do that, you want to have players that you really like, but no one else likes. Because if no
Mm-hmm.
one else likes the players that you like and you're doing well, you don't have to pay your guys as much.
Yeah, I get what you mean. But I'm trying to think who's the player like that.
So
Usually, if it's a
what
good
I
player, everyone likes it.
yeah, obviously like it's really hard to build unique value, but
Yeah.
usually it happens with players on the bench, like Miami and Golden State, both renowned for um like building players from scratch and having defensive guards to support their system.
I mean, that's just great drafting and scouting. It's not really building unique players. Like all the players that Miami and Golden State
Mm.
built, draft to scout.
Yeah,
It's not like people won't take them. Like
yeah,
even
okay,
Tyler Hero,
yeah, I
like
understand.
people will easily
Yeah,
take that.
yeah. No, I'm not
Like
talking
everyone
about
will
Tyler
take
here.
him. It's just
I'm
that
talking about like everyone like 6 through to 15, like all the who's the other point guard?
yeah. But even then, like
Gabe
usually if
Vincent,
they're
those sort of guys,
if
like
yeah, even then
Struess.
if those are people that if they're decent, people will
Mm,
sign them in free agency. They probably won't spend a second round pick on it or
yeah,
like they wouldn't do a
yeah.
trade for it, not because it's they don't want the player. It's just that
Mm,
it just sounds stupid to just trade one very deep bench player for another very deep bench player. That's not gonna really change
yeah,
much. Like
that's
Miami
what
is like,
I'm
why am
saying.
I doing this? Too?
Like just being able to build some sort of unique value, at least the start when they're recruiting these players. Do you think it's purely just down to recruitment then, or do you not think like
I
they're
think
looking for
yeah.
like some sort of inefficiency in the market?
Nah, I think it comes down to good scouting, and obviously like you have to build a system, a culture, all of that stuff, and we can definitely
Uh,
talk about that because it kind
yeah,
of does fit into environment and stuff. Like they're just places where when young players go, they just boost a little better. Like to be honest, even like Man United, like let's be honest, our culture hasn't been great. Like we've players
mm,
come to Man United and just go like
mm,
that's not what you want. You want players to come to the club and go up and get better. Like
yeah.
have the environment to get better.
I mean,
Which
it's different in
we can
soccer
definitely
because
talk
like
about that.
because you develop in soccer with like loans and you
Loans and
develop you develop without the team you're going to play with most of the time.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't know, it's
No, but
completely different there,
even
even
in
in the NBA. Yeah.
football, like we have like clubs like Ajax and stuff that are really
Mm.
like purely like
Yeah,
talent.
development
They
based.
just
Yeah.
know how to scout the best. They just
Mm.
develop the talent, and I'm sure there's more other than Ajax as well. Like they get I think Sporting as well, right? As well,
Yeah,
they're very good
like
at scouting.
when the spotlight isn't on you, and that's probably why it's easier in Miami, easier in Toronto, I would say. Like when the spotlight isn't on you, you can have these younger
Yeah,
guys. You can make a few more mistakes when you're not on the big stage,
yeah,
and that's
yeah,
essentially
yeah,
what you get in a lot of leagues outside the big European leagues. Like you get
yeah.
teams actually given a chance to build a style of play, and they're allowed to make
Mm.
mistakes. And like in the Premier
Yeah,
League,
no, that's right.
you're not allowed to make mistakes, man. You're fired within like a month. Like if
Yeah,
you're
I mean
making
that.
mistakes
Yeah,
like
that
that.
makes sense. I was thinking like even the lower levels of Premier League clubs, it doesn't
Mm,
make sense to me why they don't use the scouting method a bit more. Like yeah, for like Man United, for the top six
yeah,
clubs, they can't really afford to you know waste their time and scout, make some mistakes. But
yeah, yeah,
there's clubs like all the way at the bottom, like the Burnleys, the Bournemouths, all those
yeah.
clubs can they. I feel like I don't
I think
know.
they do
In
though.
Premier League, there's not as much. They do?
I
Do you
think
reckon
they
they
do.
do?
They do. I think well, obviously like Brighton. Brighton is the best scouting
Brighton,
team right
yeah, I
now.
think out of all of them, they're probably
Yeah,
like the
Brighton
ones
is obviously the
above.
best
Yeah,
scouting team, but all the other ones they do take a lot of like low value like bets, high risk bets on like young players, at least in the academy. But there's also on the other side a team like Nottingham Forest. They're just They just buy these experienced players, all 28 and above. They bought so many of these guys and just signed them to like 1 year contracts like it was the NBA, and they're just
Yeah.
like backing
I mean,
experience
yeah.
over that.
I mean, like but the problem is, if that is what they're doing,
Mm.
why are these clubs not coming up?
What do you mean, like
So if
the
they are
quality?
doing
Yeah,
like the scouting, the high risk thing, I mean, like other than the top six, we just haven't seen clubs really come up unless they get a huge influx of money. Like I'm
yeah. I mean,
assuming Newcastle had like I'm pretty sure
it's a
Newcastle had a
buyer's
huge influx of
market.
money.
It's a buyer's market. Like these players are getting like taken within a year, if not. You look at someone like Cucurella signed, and Cucurella was a bit of a known quantity. Like he came from Barca. Like he didn't
Yeah.
come from nowhere. He came from Barca. He came from La Liga. He's had a couple seasons. Moved to Brighton. Within a year, got to move to Chelsea. So it's a buyer's market, and because of how inflated everything is, those teams might not be coming up, but those players from those teams are coming up. You look at Brentford, very analytical approach to how they do things. They've let go of a lot of people. They've let go of Watkins to Villa. They let go of Benrahma to West Ham, and then they got promoted the year after. So Brentford, I would say, is probably one of the better examples of a team that's getting those players to the Premier League with and without them.
Yeah, but is that because the players want to leave, or is it
Yeah,
more that
yeah.
the club wants to
Well,
make money out of it?
why would you I think it's both, but why as a player? I mean, we talked about player power last week. What reward is there to playing in the championship to you? Like, as much as we want to pretend this whole I'm here for the club, I'm here for the growth, I'm a one club sort of guy, as much as we want to pretend that's true, is becoming a franchise state, and like you have to in a 10-year career, man. I say this every time, like I don't judge a player if they want a big money move. Like it's not going to come around very
I
often.
don't know. I mean, like if you're already in the Premier League, like
Yeah,
I get Championship, is you're completely out of it. But
yeah,
I get it if you're on like a bottom level Premier, like even like a Brentford, right?
yeah.
I mean, wouldn't you want to stay and see, say, like a
I mean,
championship with Brentford would be worth more than the championship in,
yeah,
Man
100%. But
City?
like, it's impossible. How many times have we said a miracle title win? Only once in 20 plus
But
years
we
of the Premier
won't
League.
get the miracle title wins
If we
if
don't
these
try,
clubs aren't competing. I mean, like
exactly.
we're never gonna
I
get it.
I feel like that's more of an issue with a team like Nottingham Forest, which is planning to survive. You look at Burnley. I love Sean Dyche, but because the system rewards survival, the system pays you to survive in the Premier League, right? It's such a
Yeah.
drop off to the second division that his mission was just to survive, and he did it well for quite a long time. He was at Burnley for more than 8 years, and in this day and age, him, Simeone, Alex Ferguson, Arsene Wenger, apart from those four, I really don't know many guys that have stayed at the top level at one club for that long. I'm just sort of thinking now, though, those sort of teams, yeah, they've never had sort of any ambition to build. They've never had an
Yeah.
ambition to impose their style, and that's just one of the things you're never going to get when you reward survival. It's just not one of those things. If you might close off the league and build a super league, you might see a team try something because
I
everyone has
mean,
to win.
yeah, that's what I'm gonna say. Because like we talk about this whole Super League idea, how it breaks
Mm,
competition and stuff, but we're kind of doing the same thing with
mm,
just the main clubs winning. Like the fact that all of these lower level clubs, yeah, the relegation aspect is still there,
yeah,
but if we're
the
never
buyer's
gonna
market.
get if we're never gonna get a Brentford to win the league, or we have to wait once in what like 20 years or 30 years for a Brentford, or Brighton, or a Burnley, or Newcastle. Well, Newcastle not
Yeah.
really part of it, but for them to win a league, if it's going to take 30, 40 years, then are we not just doing a Super League all over again? Is this not the
I
Super
mean,
League?
yeah, like if you don't want to have salary caps and you don't want to do that sort of thing where owners are actually allowed to basically spend whatever they want. Look at Chelsea, look at City, look at United, whole
Yeah.
bunch of clubs which are spending way more than the other clubs. If you want to have it this way, this is how it turns out. The biggest people win more often than not. It's just a law of averages at that point. And I'd say one title for Leicester in those 30 years, they were 5,000 to 1 at the start. So I'll take that sort of a miracle in this system. But I definitely do think there's perks big perks to obviously having a closed off league at the
Yeah,
cost of a lot of clubs, a lot of history, a lot of tradition, and main
yeah,
thing, of course, the English fans that love their idea of promotion relegation.
yeah. I just wish we had it. Like the smaller clubs have a chance.
Mm.
They're actually putting
Not
competition
not
up
even
there.
not even a chance for me. It's more about building a system where they're actually allowed to try. And this is
Yeah,
something I want to touch on
exactly.
in a later video. One of my ideas, obviously, when this lockdown happened, when the whole Super League actually got proposed properly that first
Yeah.
time with all the teams and the protests, I was thinking, what can we do to reward these sort of teams? And I was thinking along the lines of a scaled benefit system. Right now, of course,
I
it's
think
just
you
one
mentioned
through to
that.
20. Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
1 through to 20, right? Each team gets rewarded based on where they finish, just in a ladder, top to bottom. And I was thinking, what if we take some sort of expectations analysis of where teams are predicted to
yeah,
finish at the start of the season? And you see that thing in the NBA, not with the predictions, but you see them get a reward based on where they finish inversely with a draft picks, basically. And I was thinking, let's look at the teams that are overperforming and give them an extra injection of cash. You look at the likes of Sheffield United, had a great season in 1920. You look at the likes of Burnley, almost finishing in those Europa League spots, and West Ham back in the day. You look at these teams and just wonder to yourselves, just for a moment, what could they have actually done with an extra 10, 20 million at the helm to not even spend that on players, but maybe just for their facilities or something like that, or look at a new scouting network. So many different things you can do just with that extra cash and just evening it out just a
yeah, for
little
sure.
bit. I definitely think it
Yeah,
would be interesting. Obviously, there's issues if we start introducing a scaled system in the Premier League, sorry, just with predictions analysis, you're going to see tanking, aren't you?
yeah, we're gonna see that, and I was also thinking that I don't know. I was thinking overall as well. Do you think it's a culture thing as well? Like in NBA, as much as we have the fans and um, media quite sorry, fans and media being quite reserved to their own franchise, there is a level of we look at the other teams, and if we see an exciting player, we're gonna root for them. Like we're gonna be like,
Yeah,
oh no, we like them. We're gonna buy their jersey, which is
yeah,
indirectly funding. More people go watch their games. I think in football we just don't have that. I feel like if there was a young, exciting player, let's say in one of the lower clubs, he would not be able to build or like draw a lot of attention, a lot of revenue, a
yeah.
lot of money
It's
into
it's
the
not
club from
the
that,
it's not the same,
or even
but
a
I
style
think
of play.
that's more down to, I'd say, just the marketing that the NBA is able to achieve.
Yeah,
And you look at players that there are those players though. There are those players in the Premier League. You look at what Jack Grealish did at Villa before he got his move.
yeah,
You look at what Wilfred Zaha has done year in year out. An example of a player, by the way, that we were talking about has stayed, and in my
yeah,
opinion, I think we'll do a video on him later, but has suffered because of that decision because he's
yeah,
essentially just rotted, and he will never get an opportunity to compete at the top level, who never experienced a Champions League night unless he flies over to Turkey and wants to do it over there. This is a player
yeah,
of the highest quality, potentially, that never got the move he wanted and maybe didn't want at times. There are those players, and they do have a cult following in football, but I don't think beyond that, you look at the marketability, they're not getting the same sponsorship deals. They're definitely not getting the same sort of money unless they make that big move.
yeah. Exactly,
But
exactly.
it's just that thing. It's a big market sport, and we're still in this lullaby pretending that it's not a franchise sport, and that's what I try and explain to everyone every day. Like, we're watching this from the other side of the world. I don't know how we can say
Oh yeah,
the tradition of the club, the values. For me, it's so hard to commit to that side of the club because back then, look where we were. Like, our families were in a totally different country, following a totally
yeah,
different sport. Like, that stuff doesn't hit me that hard. I'm here for the sport. Other people, obviously, they're going to be here for the tradition. Football to them means a family experience. It means where their dad, whatever, got into the sport. For us, it's really just a passion that comes
yeah,
from a round ball going into a net, a round ball going into a bucket, that sort of thing.
And it also means that you aren't going to support a club that's not good. Like
Yeah,
you wouldn't
and
rep sitting in Australia. You would sitting in Australia. You're not going to be like, yeah, I'm going to be a Nottingham Forest
yeah,
fan because,
it's
like, let's
there
be
are
honest,
those
you got
people
nothing
out
extra.
there. There are those people that try and be extra and find a club and then they'll fall in love with it. But to take that initial chance on a club that's failing, it's not something you're going to see from fans outside England. You know, unless you
Yeah,
have that natural relation in terms of proximity. Like
yeah,
why else would you do that? And
exactly.
that's what I found. That's what I found strange at the Wanderers games because I've watched a few now and I've been watching on and off for like my whole life, but it's like the quality isn't there. But this is meant to be my team, and I try and
Exactly.
remind myself of that. I try and remind myself of that. And then when you watch some of the marketing, and it's like, okay, I get it. This is meant to be my team. This is meant to be my team. But something is just missing there. I'm not sure what it is. Obviously, the quality is at a level which is much better than before. But I don't know. I
Yeah,
just when it comes to sports, I like watching the best, but I don't mind. I don't mind watching it at least at a level where it's relatively competitive. If I watch two bad teams
yeah,
versus each other, I'm still gonna have a good time.
yeah. No, I think that's what the NBA has done a lot better
Mm,
to the
mm,
Premier League in the sense that you could be on the other side of the world and you could pick any of the clubs, any of the
mm.
franchises, and you have a direction that you can go. Like it's not like you're done for life. At least you're gonna see an exciting player that you're gonna root for. You're gonna go kind of hope for a high draft pick. Like
Yeah.
something's coming up.
It it keeps you locked in. It keeps you locked in.
Yeah, it does.
And
It does.
that's just one of the things you're never going to get in a promotion relegation thing unless you're immersed into the immersed into the game. And as a fan in this day and age, with how short our attention spans are, it's hard to make that happen. Anyways, I
Yeah,
think we'll leave it there. Stay tuned, stay locked
yeah.
in. Hopefully not on hiatus anytime soon. Me and Saru, stay locked in.